I'm seeing a lot of people just walk in the gym, hit the mats, and then they're wondering kind of why they're getting crushed or why they're ending up with specific injuries or repetitive injuries. And there's a lot of easy ways to start avoiding that and learning your body better.
Yo, what's up everybody? This is Minju.
And Chris.
Yeah, so we're back with another episode of Krammer Talks Physio.
Yep.
Right, so what are we talking about today? I mean, it's your show. So.
Yeah. Well, you facilitate. You bring the good questions and I answer them. It seems to work best that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Or at least for how I work. So, today's topic is warm-ups and cooldowns, and how I'm seeing a lot of people just walk in the gym, hit the mats, and then they're wondering kind of why they're getting crushed or why they're ending up with specific injuries or repetitive injuries. And there's a lot of easy ways to start avoiding that and learning your body better.
Gotcha. So are these concepts applied to jiu-jitsu and martial arts specifically, or are they kind of like for all athletes, for different sports?
We'll be speaking in the context of jiu-jitsu, but the principles apply across any sort of endeavor. So even for your workday, you can warm up effectively for that, particularly if you have physical work. But even mental work, the same principles apply. You just have to figure out how they apply to whatever you're doing.
All right, So why is warming up properly so important? I mean, because in traditional jiu-jitsu classes, right? I mean, we have like traditional warm-ups where you go in, you're doing like, some running, you're like moving your shoulders around, you do your jiu-jitsu movements, the shrimps, you do some bear crawl, you do some jumping jacks, are we talking about that type of stuff, or is it something different?
A little more specific than that, more detailed and a little bit more updated. So a general warm-up like you're describing is good for getting the blood going, it'll get people's heart rates up.
Thank you. It's okay. We won't even edit this out. This is,
gotcha.
It's a buddy who I haven't seen in a long time.
That's brilliant. Friends are important. So in a general warm-up, it'll get you moving generally, but that's as far as it'll take you. None of that stuff is particularly, like outside of the shrimping, specific to the jiu-jitsu work. So in a more adapted or specific warm-up, you want to move from like a general, okay, now I'm in a new environment, I'm going to be doing a different task, change your breathing accordingly, become aware of how you're breathing. So whether it's short and sharp, slow and relaxed, maybe get your heart rate up a little bit with some breath work, move into some general stuff so the joints are moving again, and that's where you can move from the general to the specific. So if you notice like, okay, during my run or my jog, my right hip's feeling tight, you want to spend a little bit of time working on that hip, opening it up with active stretching or a little bit of like contract relax work so that the joint itself is now mobile, and then take that into jiu-jitsu specific stuff. So let's say in your general warm-up, you've realized, okay, my right hip is feeling a little tighter than my left. I don't feel as confident in it. You've done some specific right hip warm-ups after that work for you. From there, you want to take that into your shrimping and be aware of like, okay, now that hip is moving better. Here's how I can incorporate it into my actual technique work. And using your technique work as a warm-up is a lot better than just doing jumping jacks or something like that, because it's more reps in the motions that your sport requires.
Okay. So if I'm hearing you correctly, because again, I always like to kind of paraphrase what I heard just to make sure I actually understood it correctly. So you're saying there's a general part of the warm-up where it's more about kind of, I guess, kind of activating your nervous system in a way, right? With breath works and everything, right? And that would be kind of general for everybody, right? Because we all need to do the breath work the same way. But I'm gonna ask you about how to do it, because right now I'm just thinking like, that type of thing, which I'm sure, but that's probably not the case. But once we do some type of breath work to kind of work with the nervous system, and then we move into specific, and that would be kind of individualized, right? Like as you were saying, if somebody's got one hip tighter than the other, then the specific warm-up movement that person would be doing was probably going to be different from somebody else who has a really tight shoulder or something, right?
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and that way your warm-up's tailored to you, because not everybody should do the same warm-up. A guy who's limber is going to do a little bit more like strength work or like being aware of where his range is that day, versus somebody who's really stiff needs to get moving again. They don't need the strength or the stiffness.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then obviously there's also the age difference in everybody, right? And injury histories and whatnot.
The young guys are going to warm up quicker, and the guys who are a little bit more beat up.
The young guys are not going to warm up.
Yeah, they won't warm up for a while, and then I'll see them on my table in a couple of years. So.
I know, it's like, it doesn't, that's a funny thing, right? It doesn't even matter how much literature and research is out there that tells you have to warm up.
Exactly.
But when you're young, you're stupid, you're dumb as fuck, man.
Totally. The trick is to make it relevant, because a lot of warm-ups are boring. They're like, okay, how does this relate to my sport? I just want to get into it. I want to have fun. So if you can find a way to make your warm-up engaging or amplify whatever you do
Have you been
in your training.
Have you been in jiu-jitsu long enough to get the joke where they say purple belts don't show up to the warm-ups? Yeah,
that's what I based a lot of my thinking off. Actually, I was like, okay, all the purple belts are going to get wrecked in a couple of years, and that's why all the black belts are super beat up and the brown belts are walking funny. And it's like, okay, so you started skipping your warm-ups.
All right, cool. Wow. So then I guess it's a good time to let's talk about specific examples of what that would look like. Because as you did say, we did say the breath work. I'm actually really curious. What does that look like?
Gotcha. Yeah. It can be as simple as awareness. So we move through our workday, we kind of forget about our breathing. We've got a bunch of tasks to deal with. You got your boss at work, or you've got an order to deliver to a client, like whatever the case is. And we tend to forget and lose track of how we're actually breathing and feeling our breath. So it's as simple as like before your class starts, grab 5 minutes ahead of time to just sit. I find an upright posture is a little better than lying on your back because you want to get more engaged.
So just sitting cross-legged like this is
exactly.
fine? Yeah? Okay.
Or like any posture you're comfortable in. And then from there, close your eyes if you like it. Otherwise, you can keep your eyes open. Think you're going in through the nose, all in the belly, none in the chest, and then out through the mouth again. And this will bring you a little bit more in contact with your breath, your awareness of it. And then from there, you can begin to play with it. There's no real specific correct way to breathe. Obviously, you want your neck a little bit more relaxed, breathe from the diaphragm as much as you can. But the point is just to become aware of it and see like, oh, am I stuck in my chest breathing? Because as soon as somebody has chest pressure on me, I don't have anywhere else to go from there. So you want to see if you can get it dropped into your belly. And then from there, begin to increase the rate a little bit. That'll help bring up your heart rate in a natural way. And it helps facilitate a state shift from your relaxed workday or your like very stressed out workday into something you actually are excited to be doing.
Okay, all right. So in a way, it sounds like when you're doing the breath work, when you're breathing through your belly and not your chest, you're almost doing like a mental scan of your scan of your body, scan of your body.
Yep.
Right, and just to see. And that would probably allow you to start noticing like, hey, you know what, my right shoulder is hurting today, or,
exactly
or my right ass cheek is really hurting from the spanking I got last night from the missus, right? That type of thing, right?
Yeah. Ideally, you're not getting spanked too often unless you're into that, but like, hey, whatever, do your thing. But yeah, and you take that specific information. So like, let's say I've got the right shoulder and it's a little tighter than another shoulder, or it's feeling loose and a little vulnerable. That's where through my general warm-up, I'll keep an eye on it, see if it starts feeling better by the end of the general section. And if it's not, that's where I spend my specific time doing a little bit of shoulder, like either rotator cuff activity.
All right, so we'll get into that in just a bit, but I'm not done with the breath work
Not
yet.
done with the breath work, okay.
Yeah, so are you trying to breathe like slowly? I mean, is there like a general guideline of how many seconds in, how many seconds out, or anything like that?
I don't tend to prescribe too much on that realm. It's whatever the person finds most effective. Some guys get really into the zone by slowing it down as much as possible. Really what you want to pay attention to is how focused you become. So if you can breathe a little bit faster and that gets you in your zone, you're like revved up, ready to go, that's excellent. Or if you come in and you notice you're breathing really fast that day, see if you can slow it down, focus on a couple details in your body. Like see, how does it feel if I get my air low versus my air high? Am I breathing more into right chest, left chest, that kind of thing?
Okay, yeah. So is it better to do that with your eyes open or closed?
If you find you're distracted with your eyes open, like there's too many people bouncing around the gym, or you're watching somebody do like unrelated kickboxing work or something like that, like it's badass stuff, fun to watch, not gonna help you warm up at all.
All right.
So then close your eyes, focus on yourself, and you have an opportunity to open up later.
Gotcha. And how long do you say to do it for?
No more than a minute is usually necessary once the practice is developed, because all it really serves to do is bring us aware of our bodies, or awareness of our bodies, and then from there know that we're intentionally going into intense or higher intensity training rather than our standard day-to-day.
Gotcha. All right. And then another thing that comes to mind is, would you say doing a breath work like that before you get into a fighting situation, because it's martial arts, right?
Yep.
So does that have anything to do with like toning down the fight or flight type of reaction, which tends to spike the stress hormones and stuff, right?
It gives you more control over like some of the background processes of the body. So our autonomic system is like all the stuff in our background. The parasympathetic is rest and digest. You don't want to be there while you're fighting somebody. You do want to.
You don't want to have
intentionally
to
be in fight or flight.
Right.
And that's where gaining the awareness of your breath and intentionally speeding it up gets your body thinking, okay, deploy some energy here. We're actually going to be intense and focused now. If you go in too lackadaisical, you're going to get your ass handed to you. If you go in too hyped up, you'll have your ass handed to you too, because then you've burnt all this energy.
Right, the adrenaline and
exactly.
Everything. Right, so it's almost like you're getting yourself into the best flow state to actually absorb information and learn most effectively, right?
Yep.
All right, cool. Wow. You know what? That's awesome. So once we move beyond the general, the breath work, then let's say if I like let's say for I guess use you as an example. Then
Yep.
what would you notice and what would you do specifically for your warm up?
Yeah, I tend to have tighter adductors a lot of the time. Like through powerlifting and a couple other sports, I developed a lot of strength in them, but they like to clamp themselves together. And the biggest thing that I'm finding in training currently is I have a hard time keeping my base. My knees want to play together, and really I need to split them out, like grab more ground and control that way. Like we found when we were rolling today, like in side control, you got to get your legs wide. So if I have a hard time doing that when I'm not fighting somebody, I'm gonna have a really hard time doing it while I am fighting somebody. So for my own warm up in particular, I would do a little bit more adductor work. Like an example of that would just be getting some hip rotation going. So you can start in your 90-90 position. And it could be as simple as just lifting that knee up and getting the muscles through here to let go, and doing it under control. So you've got your awareness of the breath. You don't want to just hold your breath and crank it, because that's just fight or flight and it's useless. You won't hold on to that in a roll. But if you can like breathe in on the way up, breathe out on the way down, then the body's going to go, okay, that's safe to do. We own that. We can apply that in a more dangerous scenario. And then from there you progress into getting that up higher until you're eventually swapping the legs. And that midpoint of the transition is really what you're going to be looking for, because that's the legs playing a part, and that's an example of some more specific
Very
stuff.
nice, very nice. Because obviously, somebody who already has very loose and flexible adductors, no abductors. Adductors. Then they will be kind of wasting their time doing
Exactly,
that, right?
and it might even put them in a little bit of danger, because like if you're too bendy and you add more to that, you're gonna go too far past like where the joint can actually handle itself. Nice. So somebody like that, I would spend more time doing like activation work, so they could go to the end of their very bendy range, give themselves a little bit of resistance, and then contract into it as hard as possible, so that they know they have control there, and that would serve as a more effective warm-up for them.
Cool, very nice. Yep. So how many different movements do you actually want to get in there? Because we don't want to be spending like half an hour just warming up, right?
Exactly. Think of it as few as necessary, but nothing less than that. So like you don't want to do too much. Obviously 20 would be way too many movements. You're going to spend most of your class time warming up in that case, and that's no good. It's the crew that spend too much time on their foam roller before hitting the gym. They never actually train, and they get stuck in their problems. So you want to find like maybe 5
If you feel personally
exercises.
attacked,
yes.
it's okay. Don't
It's intentional. Get better. So what you want to do is find like say 3 to 5 that you know work for your problem areas, and your problem areas will shift over time. So eventually your movement vocabulary or your movement library grows. So you'll be like, okay, the shoulder feels funky today. I'm going to do these 3 exercises for that. The rest of my body's feeling good. I don't need to address it specifically. And then on another day, let's say your shoulder's feeling good, but your back is a little bit iffy. Get more into whatever back stuff works for you, and then your warm-up becomes entertaining and educational, where you go like, okay, this is what I've learned about my body, this is what keeps it going, so I can apply those when I need them, but I'm not going to get bored because I'm doing it every single time I'm in the gym. So if you're doing it every time and nothing's getting better, there's still a problem there.
Nice. Wow, this is awesome. Yep. Good. Well, thanks for that. So warming up properly, and then would you say cool down is just as important, more important, or
Arguably
it's a waste
more
of time?
important. Yeah, so definitely like a warm-up is key to get into it, and a cool down is even more important to facilitate the recovery afterwards. It's great if you can get yourself revved up, hit the class, but if you can't rev down afterwards, you're not gonna hold on to anything you've learned. It's gonna go in one ear, out the other ear, and then you're back at class the next day going like, shit, I'm having my ass handed to me again on something I learned yesterday. And that's not somewhere anybody wants to be. So at the end of your class, just as we would start with like breathwork, general, specific, and then into sport specific in your regular warm-up, you go reverse order out of that into like back to your daily routine. So you can start by walking around the mats after the class is concluded, note like, okay, during free roll, I got like a little bit tweaked in my knee, so I want to address that before it becomes something else. And that's where you would go do a little bit of specific stuff for the knee, then some general, and then some breath work to calm your system back down and take you out of performance mode.
Gotcha. So I guess it allows your body to have a chance to actually recover properly. Then,
Exactly.
Right? All right, because again, I think most people don't cool down at all.
Nope.
I'm guilty of that too.
I've watched a lot of guys go from very intense work on the mats to just driving home, and it's not a great place to be from what I've found.
Gotcha. I guess for me, because I have a 15-minute walk back home after class. So I guess that's my cool down. So I guess in a way I'm better off than somebody who just hops into the car, right?
Yep. And like the 15-minute walk home is a great start to the warm up. You just want to use that time effectively. Or cool down, my bad. You want to use that time effectively. So like as you're walking, okay, my ankle feels good on this side, it doesn't feel good on the other side, or I generally feel pretty great. That's a good sign that whatever you did in training was well tolerated. And then if you're feeling particularly beat up, you know to apply more of what you know to keep your body feeling good.
Gotcha. So would the specific movement training be different during the cool down? Let's say your hip, your adductors, for example. Let's use the same.
Exactly.
Let's use the same muscle group, right? So you did that 90-90 kind of switching thing for warm up. Let's say you feel like, oh man, now it's really feeling really tight after class. What type of movement would you do to address that?
You could either use the same movement and move through it a little bit more slowly, spending more time getting into the detailed, like, okay, it feels good in this range, doesn't feel good in that one. I'm gonna hold it there and breathe for a bit until the muscle learns to relax. Or you can do more extended regular stretching work, like if you wanted to get into a frog's pose, child's pose. Yoga often goes well with this if that's kind of your thing. Otherwise, aim for whatever feels best for your body. So some people will respond well to just like light contract relax work. Other people do extended stretching and breathing. So anything that you find helps drop tension out of a muscle will be a good starting point.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. And then how about the breath work to end it?
That's where we get more specific because we want to intentionally get into the low and slow and take our heart rate back down again. We want to take our brain back down out of things, and it provides a good opportunity to reflect. So you can go like, while you're doing deep relaxed breathing, what did you learn today? Like, where were you excelling? Where do you need to shore up next time? What skills did you learn? Use it as a bit of like a gathering time, and then afterwards journal out whatever thoughts you get.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
In terms of the breathing itself, think like 20 breaths is often enough, but you want to go very low, very slow. So get as much volume, control it on the way in, control it on the way out.
Yeah, but same thing, belly breathing, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Cool. So it sounds like for the breath work for getting into the session, it's more laissez-faire, right?
Yep.
You know, we don't have to be too specific about it. But getting out of a workout, we want to be very intentional. Then, right?
Exactly. Everybody lights up in a slightly different way, and then bringing yourself out of that state, it'll eventually be pretty individualized. But starting out with intentionally getting slow and controlled after a high intensity environment is a really good starting point for people.
Gotcha. All right. So would this whole process change for somebody who may be training twice or 3 times a day, like a pro fighter, right? If they train in the morning, they did all that stuff to get out of the state, and now 2 hours later or 3 hours later, they have to get back into that state again. How does anything change?
That's interesting. I haven't thought about that at all, but it's a fun one to like think over quickly right now. I would say stick with it. See how well you can learn to control your system, especially as a fighter, because they've got 3 to 5 rounds to fight. They've got micro breaks, so you might as well practice the bigger version of that in your training environment and see how much control can I intentionally develop over my system, and then apply that in different scenarios.
Nice. All right. So I guess this is going to be one of the topics we will revisit.
Yep, definitely.
Once you look into it more, maybe work with some fighters and to see how that works. For them. Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, man. Was that a good conversation for you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Excellent.
All right. Anything you feel like we missed that you would like to address or anything like that?
Nope. I think I covered all my points pretty well.
All right, perfect. Yep. But we did miss something. If you want to work with Chris.
Yes, that's the one we keep forgetting.
I know, because we're doing these videos just to really try to educate and help people.
Yeah,
right. Because I don't know too much about this subject, but just by working with Chris, it's been so eye-opening for me, and I can absolutely vouch for Chris that he's super knowledgeable. He knows a lot and has helped a lot of people.
Yep.
So if you want to talk to Chris, right? So we will have the number and the email address in the description or in the comments as always. So you can text him, email him directly. We'll also have a link that you can just go in and book an assessment with him. Highly recommend it. And that's gonna be the best way. And we're also working on something that's going to be super cool for you guys. The warm up and the cool down guidelines and procedures we talk about today. It's very generalized, right? It's just something to give you food for thought. Right. But we are working on
more detail.
I know, but we're working on putting into an exact guideline with different exercise selections and whatever you can start looking at. Depending on how you feel that day, So
exactly.
Yeah. So if you want us to, to move our ass and get that thing done, then just leave in the comments.
Yep.
Tell us that you want one. You want to see that as soon as you can, and then maybe we'll put more effort into it. Otherwise we're gonna take
the effort's gonna happen eventually.
Otherwise we're gonna take
it'll
our sweet
happen
time.
faster. Yeah.
Right? Cool.
Exactly.
And just like that, another episode of Krammer Talks Physio with Minju.
Exactly.
All right.
Jam.
We'll see you
Right
guys
there.
next time.
That was a good one.